Heidi Jacobs with Slap Stuff Together, and today I did a tutorial on how to layer vinyl to make a license plate. Like this one that I made. I made it for my dad because he's divorced and he got rid of his ex. I started off by picking up the blank and measuring it out. So it was about 12 inches by 6 inches. And one of the things that I had to be concerned about were those holes. So I didn't want to make the sticker any larger so that it would cover up those holes, because that's where the screws go in to mount them to your car. Now in Silhouette Studio, I've picked up my DXF file that I created of the Riddex logo with the added E. I had already created the outlines and everything, so now it was just a matter of color coding each layer based on what color it was going to need to be cut out of the mat. This is just my own organization, so I made the silver, gray, what was going to be produced on the blue, and what was going to be produced on the yellow. I chose an orange so you could see it a little bit better. Now, since I'm creating a layered sticker, I have to create registration marks. So that's what those two boxes that I created in red are at the top. And in order to be able to choose which colors that I want to output per sheet, I have to go into the advanced properties. So I'm going to want to make sure that the red is always on for whatever cut I'm doing, and that my color is chosen that I'm cutting. Now I go through and just update my settings based on the substrate and based on the tool that I want to use. I'm just making sure I double check every setting has been kept, because sometimes if you click on something on a computer, it automatically clicks on something else. You just want to make sure that you click on the right thing. And for the Cameo 3, there are two blade positions, one on the left and one on the right, red and blue. So in the left, I've just made sure that my correct tool is in place because I have several blades. Now I'm just mounting the substrate to the sticky back. What it's doing right now is calibrating the auto blade, making sure that it's set the way that I want it to for the specific substrate. It's pretty effective, although the device is pretty loud, so it kind of threw me off the first time I used it. Like, oh man, is this thing broken? Nope. Not broken, just loud. So the next thing you want to do is load up your next sheet. And then you go back to the computer and you change the selection of color so it's cutting out the correct one. Make sure that the registration marks are in place, and then send it to the machine. And the machine makes pretty quick work, especially when it's a thin material like vinyl. So the next color is obviously yellow. So I'm just loading it in the machine. I make sure that I choose the correct colors, and then I send it to the Cameo. Now I trim everything to size because it's a lot easier to deal with when you don't have giant pieces of material available to you, because when you're weeding this stuff out, sometimes it's so sticky and so irritating. You don't want to get it stuck on everything, plus you don't want to waste it. So my registration marks, sometimes those you really have to make sure that you don't peel them away with your waste, because if you do, then you're kind of stuck trying to register to nothing. In my first attempt at this video, I didn't get a very good picture to show you what I was doing, so I went ahead and I just output a smaller version so you can see a little bit of weeding and also how to register a little bit tighter to the screen, because I reviewed the footage and I felt like you couldn't really see what I was doing. And I also wanted to show a technique for if you get your piece stuck to the material, you can put it on a separate piece of the clear transfer paper and then transfer it onto your subject matter. So in this case I just made a quick coaster. And I took the piece that was stuck to the mat board and went ahead and just applied it right directly to the piece. Usually what I'll do is I'll laminate all of the colors together on the clear transfer tape and then put it on the final piece, but in this case it didn't really matter too much, so I thought that this would be a good opportunity to show you that technique. Now with this stuff it's kind of tricky because those little registration marks, the smaller the pieces that you get, the harder it is to get the transfer paper to work. So you really have to make sure that you press down enough, otherwise it all just stays behind on the white backing. So you see I'm struggling a little bit with those tiny registration marks, but they eventually come off with the transfer paper. With the transfer paper you want to make sure that you go the top layer to the bottom layer. That way when you transfer the sticker it's right reading, unless you're doing a reverse print where you're putting it on a clear surface that protects it. In this case I'm just using tile to create a coaster. One of the things with the silver is that it's a little bit thinner and stretchier than the other colors, so you get a lot of bubbles in it. I'm not a big fan of it. In order to see your registration marks, you cut away the white backing just to the area that the registration marks are at. That way you don't accidentally slip up and glue down the other top layers over the piece before it's actually set where you need it to be. So here I am back to the full-size piece, and I'm just kind of laying it out blindly as best I can, and my next step is to peel away the entirety of the vinyl sticker. And you'll see that I'm going to try and leave behind the registration marks. I don't really need those anymore. And I'll just kind of eyeball it and get it centered on the piece. And I try and put the whole piece down in the center, and then I push out from the center to kind of push all the bubbles out. So the silver, like I said, gets a lot of bubbles, so you really have to be tedious about trying to get rid of them by pushing it out to the outside edge with your fingers. If you still can't get them out, you can always poke a hole and push the air out that way, or slice along an edge and push the air through the slit that you've created. But that's about all. Any questions or comments, leave them down below.